Welcome to Be Brilliant with Jing Lang, the podcast dedicated to those seeking to excel in every aspect of their lives. Through conversations with her guests, Jing will tease out personal stories, helpful tips, and proven strategies to help you elevate your life and reach your highest potential. Get ready to dive in and discover what it means to be truly brilliant. And now, here's your host, Jing Lang.
Jon Coomber retired from the Royal Marines in 2019 as a lieutenant colonel after 25 years of service. During his career as a Green Beret, he led talented and committed people in some of the most challenging situations around the world. He co-founded Mission Mindset to support businesses globally to improve leadership, teamwork, and strategy.
Good morning, Jon. How are you doing today?
Very well. It's afternoon here, actually.
Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Devon in the southwest of England.
That is very similar to where we last met in person.
That's right. Yeah, I live very, very close to the Royal Marines Commando Training Centre.
Amazing. Please tell the audience how we met.
Well, in my last job in the Royal Marines, I was the Chief of Staff at the Commando Training Centre, where we train all of our Royal Marines from our day one recruits right through to our senior leadership courses. With a reputation and brand like the Royal Marines, you get a lot of corporate organisations and elite sports teams coming to you asking for help doing the things that we're pretty good at, such as leadership and teamwork and resilience and so on. And one of those packages that we ran was for the Swiss Re, and a pretty big group of 70 of you. And we ran a leadership package for the whole team over that week, which was really great. And I guess that was sort of the, along with the other packages we ran for people like HSBC, Volkswagen, the England football team, and so on. All of that was really the foundation for creating Mission Mindset.
That's amazing. You mentioned the England football team. Can you tell us more about that particular experience?
Yeah, so back in 2017, the England football or soccer team got knocked out of the Euros, the sort of four-year competition outside of the World Cup cycle, by the lowest ranked team in the competition. And it was an abject failure. The team were an absolute disaster. And so they brought in a new manager in shortly after that in 2017, Gareth Southgate, who just left the job. And so he's been there for 8 really successful years, including 2 finals and a semi-final and a quarter-final at the 4 major tournaments he went to, which is pretty transformational in terms of England football team performance. And we ran a secret package for all of the players and staff. There was 50 of them in secret over 3 days. And we were effectively there to create a new culture, so to do a cultural reset, which was a really great thing to be part of and to see their progress subsequently over the last 8 years.
Why secret?
Well, because the players are owned by the clubs, not by the nation. And if they'd had to ask permission to all the individual clubs, it's unlikely that they would have accepted. So in the international window, they only get a limited amount of time every year, only a couple of weeks a year, to bring the players together and train them because they've got such busy club schedules. That instead of taking the risk and asking, the England manager, Gareth Southgate, decided that he was going to take the risk personally and was just going to stick them all on what was due to be a helicopter ride to start with. But unfortunately, that got called off. And so they had to jump on a couple of buses and drive down our very busy roads in England on a Friday afternoon at its busiest to come down to us in the southwest of England. So that was why it was secret, because of the risk of the clubs saying no. They're valuable commodities like all top-end professional sports people. And trying to get permission would have been tricky.
I love it. And the secret nature just makes it even more intriguing. I guess they found out.
Yeah, they weren't told anything. Just one of our guys walked into the room, said, "You're coming with us," put them on a bus. And then 5 hours later, they turned up in the same gym that you're talking about, and they were all lined up. They were given military clothing, all of their personal items, including their mobile phones, were taken off them, all put in steel bags. It was all about them creating a new identity together, which had been lacking before. They didn't have a common identity. They were this sort of they were clusters of individuals based on the clubs that they played for, rather than having a common identity as the national football team.
So, John, you went from 25 years of institutional citizen working as a Green Beret to entrepreneur. Tell us about that transition.
Well, I sort of told you the first part of the story. As my job running all of this training, I was running about 300 plus courses a year across the whole spectrum. Well, not me personally, but I was responsible for them. And I found myself increasingly running what looked a little bit like a business school for people like yourselves. And I really enjoyed it. And I could see that there was a real appetite for it, and I could offer some value. And I enjoyed it not just because of what I was giving, but the experiences that I could get from people like yourself and your team, learning from you as well. I found that really energizing, powerful. So that was the catalyst and the seed and the energy for creating Mission Mindset. And I made the decision whilst I was in that job. I got to a point in my career where I thought, well, I'll take it one job at a time and I'll see what the balance looks like for me. And when I saw what I could do, the stage my family were at and what was exciting me, it didn't really stack up anymore. So for me, it was a pretty easy thing to do. I had a plan. I'd sort of been lucky enough to be able to test that plan with some top-end organizations, create a strong network around that. And so taking that to market was a pretty straightforward transition, I found. And really exciting as well. Firstly, I wasn't stifled or restricted in any way by the rules or the culture that I was working with, and I could make it up for myself and do what I thought was right with my business partner, Alex, and our associates. But yeah, I could set all of the boundaries and rules myself. And that was really exciting. And also finding the new skill, the little things, some of it's quite low level stuff. But, when you set business up for the first time and you've just come, as you say, from an institution in the public sector where you don't have any responsibilities for doing some of the quite simple stuff in business, like tax returns and stuff, and listing a limited company for the first time and getting somebody to put your website together and creating names and logos and branding. It's all quite low level stuff for a small business like us. But nonetheless, it was really exciting to be able to look at all that new stuff and figure out how it all fitted together and what we wanted it to look like.
So in your journey so far, what are things that you suspect it will be hard, but it turns out to be quite easy, and vice versa?
I don't really look at things in terms of how hard they can be. I guess I see them in terms of how important they are, and then allocate mine or other people's resource accordingly. If I think it's really important, then we'll find a way of making it happen. I guess I've had to do that through my whole life in my military career. It's not good enough to say, oh, that's going to be difficult. We can't do that. We have a culture that's founded on being able to do the impossible.
That's fair.
Yeah. And even more so as a collective rather than individuals. We train individuals really hard, push ourselves really hard, but getting people to work together in a really effective way, creating like super teams, that's the real power. And so I guess when I see problems, as we went through our journey of setting the business up and then trying to make it a more sustainable, and I wouldn't say scaled business because that's never really been the intention, but certainly stable, sustainable business. So all of the day-to-day stuff is de-stressed, really. Getting it to that level is you look at a problem, challenge, and you go, okay, how important is this? How good do we need to be at doing this? And then really sort of put as much energy and resource. And sometimes that's not about you doing it. It's about finding the person that is good at it. And I think that's one of my skills that I didn't have when I was younger, but I've developed over the years of having to work in situations to get the most out of people, sometimes in a quite political situation where it's quite tricky. And so understanding the right people in the right situations and how to get them to help you to deliver the effect you want. I think, that's the way I look at the problems is how much energy do we need to put into it to get the solution that we need that's good enough? And what's the most effective way of doing that? I guess the one I've not answered your question, and I won't answer any of your questions properly, I'm afraid. I'll reframe them. I'm very much like a politician in that respect.
Maybe
But
it should be.
I guess the one thing that I did figure out we were pretty poor at quite quickly was I wasn't so worried about the marketing side of things, because the way we set the business up was about creating a network of personal connections, and we still do that today. And then delivering great results, and then getting more work or referrals to new clients through that. And that's proved right for us. It wouldn't be right for every business, but it's right for us. And that's been spot on. So I've not really worried too much about the marketing side, but certainly the sales, actually convincing somebody that, especially in the early days when it was quite new, so we didn't have the evidence necessarily to go, we can do this for you and it's going to be really great. And I guess sort of what part of the culture across the military and in the Royal Marines, I think it's quite an extreme example, is humility, being humble all of the time. Now, humility and sales, there's a bit of friction in there. They're not necessarily that aligned, So you got to learn to maybe be a little bit less humble, not feel less humble, but act a bit less humble, and be a bit more forceful in simple sales techniques to get it across the line, because you're going to do a good job and you're going to be judged on that at the end of the day. So you just got to go for it. In the early days, I was in some meetings, and I did one with a sort of outdoor celebrity, and all of his media team were there, and you can imagine that they are absolute top-notch professionals. They wanted us to run some stuff for them. And before I went in, I had two of my guys going in with me. I went, look, I know you're going to sit there all humble, and you're going to, when you do the introductions around the table, you're going to go, oh yeah, I'm whoever, and I do this. This is not the time for it, right? I need you to go in there and show them that you are the most amazing person and there's nobody else in the world like it. And we go in there and we go around the table, and exactly what I'd expected happened. And they just introduced themselves and said, yeah, I'm James, and I work for Mission Mindset. I was like, what did I just say to you? It came to me and I tried my best to make up for it. So I think, sales was the one thing that I needed to, I'd been trained to do the opposite, really, and that become very sort of reinforced into my behavior. So I had to, without being inauthentic in any way, but just figure out how I could just be a bit more punchy and just get in there and make the point. Not in a way that removed credibility in any way, but just was good enough. I think was good enough.
Well, and I guess this is an opportunity to reframe as well, right? Because that was the same values I was brought up, that you're not supposed to talk about your achievement. You're supposed to, if you're doing good work, people should notice you, as opposed to shouting on top of the world for that. But I guess one way to reframe the humility versus sales is that you know that you do good work. And if you don't let people know that you're capable of changing the culture in such a way that will produce such a difference for them, they wouldn't be able to benefit from it. Right? So it's almost spreading, cascading humility by getting more people to enjoy the service, to benefit from it. I know it's still hard, because I still, as an entrepreneur now, I struggle with this every day, because I am very good at doing volunteer work, but I don't know how to ask for money. I'm still working through that. So right now I'm saying that it's a good reframe, but when it comes to I'm the person that's doing it, I still need someone to nudge me to do that.
I think it's a really good point. I completely agree with you. It's just making me think as you're talking, I guess from my personal experience, if I was to sort of give nuggets of advice as we go through this, for anybody that's is thinking about changing the way they do things and becoming an entrepreneur at any level, is one of the first things that I'd recommend is going and getting yourself some mentors. And I did that quite deliberately. And I found two mentors who were quite different. They actually knew one another and were friends, but they were quite different in the skills they offered. One had a small business and knew the nuts and bolts of setting a business up. So when I had technical questions around how do I do this, how do I do that, and I couldn't find it in a book or online or whatever, it just didn't make sense to me, I could get in touch with them. And I use them very much in the early days, just as I say for the quick WhatsApp, how do I do this? How do I do that? Super helpful. The other mentor who I still use as a mentor today was at the far more strategic level. And I guess he's my own coach, really. I always think mentoring it's a bit like having a coach, except you don't pay for them generally. So that's even better. And he was able to do introductions to people, to throw strategic ideas around with all of his experience across, and he was quite a bit older than me, across all of his lifelong business experience. So, getting some mentors that can help to channel your thinking and solve problems for you really early on, the right ones, people that you really like, they really like you, and they're the right people to go on the journey with you. I think that's super important. And going back to your question, why did you find this? What did you find difficult? Well, I think that's probably why not too much of it was difficult, because I had the right people to go and ask the questions to, and then the solutions were right there. I didn't have to scratch around for them. I know simple things like I didn't have an accountant like you don't when you start your business for the first time. I got in touch with my mentor who was providing the nuts and bolts advice. And he said, oh yeah, I use this guy. He's pretty good. My mentor lives, the other side of England to me. But he said, oh, here's my accountant. I think he lives quite close to you. And he did. He lived in Exeter, like a few miles away in my close city. So that became my accountant without having to look at all. It's just a simple piece of evidence to show how getting mentors around you can really help you. And everybody that I've ever met, or anybody that's really you want to be involved with, will be delighted if they like you and they respect you and they find what you're doing exciting. They will be delighted to help you. And I mentor several people myself who are going through the journey that I did 6 years ago for exactly that reason. I find it good for my soul, and generally it's good. It makes you feel like a good human, and it generally is quite good for business as well, because what goes around comes around.
Yeah, wow, that's really valuable advice. And I can speak from my personal experience. I had to find my accountant, right? I have one now, and he's really good. I'm very thankful for that. But I had to look. I have to talk to a few people. Same way as how I found my lawyer. Again, everything that you think. Again, I didn't have to worry about when I work for someone. You can just reach out to the legal, and now you have to find your own legal. And so it doesn't feel like it takes time, but it does, right? And it adds up. And as an entrepreneur, having your own business like you do, Jon, everything is ultimately you're the one that's responsible. You may delegate to someone else who may be better suited for it, but you're the face of the organization, and you still have to be responsible for the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And wow. Mentor-wise, I've been really lucky too. There's a couple of people I talked to are just asking general advice, and they have been just sending me connections. And if you talk to this person, you should talk to that person. This is who I use. Have you considered this? I was like, should I pay you? Like, this is amazing. Thank you so much for your interest. Jon, you already talked about humility, which is a key value. I remember that from our days together. Can you talk about disagree and commit?
Okay, within the Royal Marine Commandos culture, although we have a very strict hierarchical system like all military do, we pride ourselves on being a commando first. So your badge of honor is your green beret that you've all earned, and you've done that by passing the same standards, regardless of what rank you are. So everybody, regardless of their rank, has a voice. It doesn't mean everybody's empowered to make decisions or to have endless discussions on things, but it does mean everybody is empowered to have a voice. And not just empowered, but is expected to have a voice at the right time. So they're encouraged to do that. But ultimately, it comes to a point where you have your say, but then there is a point to align behind the plan, behind the mission, and to get on with it. And so we've sort of moved on a bit since we spoke to you, and we generally refer to that as reasonable challenge now. And quite a lot of work has gone into that. And I find myself in business talking about that a lot as well. And the UK Ministry of Defence created some pretty good guidelines actually around that, which are accessible on the internet. That it's completely unrestricted in terms of security. And it effectively has a guidelines. There are a set of rules. They're guidelines more than that, I guess, for those that are making a challenge. So how to do it in an appropriate way, in private, when the moment is right, when there's not a crisis on, that type of thing. Some basic rules when would be appropriate to make challenge. And then an equally as important set of rules for the person that's being challenged around how they should respond. So listen, stay calm, think about what's been said, and so on. So those ideas remain the same, but I guess they've been formalized in the UK across defence now, in what we call reasonable challenge now. Some of the other phrases that are used certainly in the military are loyal dissent, which is quite. I don't think that's a very business-like phrase, but is sort of quite punchy for the military. You can dissent and be loyal at the same time, which I guess is very much along the disagree and commit that
So
we
you
would
may
have
not agree with
talked
it,
about
but
when you were with us. Yeah.
got it. Okay.
So the concept's the same, just been formalized a bit more now. And when we work across all types of businesses, we find that's a real problem, that people are either fearful or not empowered to say what they think. And that's bad for a whole host of reasons that are probably self-evident, but it doesn't. You can have some great people with great ideas and they're not going to be shared. That's not good in terms of thought diversity. You're not going to feel valued and trusted if you don't feel you can have a say, and there's many more. So we work a lot with businesses across all sectors to help them to improve their culture through creating a more effective culture of reasonable challenge where people are encouraged to have their say in a loyal way, where they still get behind. Once a decision is made, they get behind that and the time for talking is over. You can go too far with it.
I found this concept so refreshing, because when I thought about military, like you said, very hierarchical, I didn't think any the underlings would even have a say. But obviously, without people voicing their concerns or excitement or anything, you won't have the culture that you do, right? Because for the culture, you need people to be themselves. You need people to be able to comfortably share if they disagree with something. So that is not at all what I thought based on the movies and other things, how military is run.
There's this real interesting thing in the military, certainly in the UK and absolutely in the Royal Marines. You've got this situation where outside of conducting military operations, which might include warfighting, going out after a big global disaster or rescuing civilians, when you conduct military operations, we empower our most junior people to make really big decisions and accept high levels of risk, often dynamic risk that can't be properly quantified. And we train them to do that. But then outside of military operations, because the nature of what we do is pretty dangerous, things like firing weapons, jumping out of planes, jumping off cliffs, and so on. It's generally pretty dangerous stuff, right? We have a really restrictive and prescriptive environment that's placed around them. So it's a bit of a paradox, really, that on one hand, we're creating all of our forces, and particularly our leaders, from very junior leaders, to be able to take high levels of responsibility and risk. But outside of operations, we give them very little freedoms.
Well, but John, do tell us about the storytelling. So I did not know that storytelling is a tool that the military, at least the Royal Marines, employs.
Well, I think storytelling is a key skill for all leaders because stories are powerful. I mean, stories are about humans, good stories. They're about human emotions. I always ask this question. This always comes up when we're running executive corporate training and talk about storytelling. And the world-class storytellers at Disney. And you think about any Disney story and it follows the same formula and it works every single time. You're introduced to the characters and then something terrible happens. There's probably a villain there. And then our heroes go on a quest and they form a coalition. It's never done alone. It's always a team of characters going on their quest. They have some setbacks. They overcome the adversity. And then through incredible grit, determination, and maybe some resourcefulness, they overcome and they achieve this great happy outcome, right? That's the Disney story. And so the ability to take something from that's actually happened and then to turn it into a story with real characters, with real human emotions, that's sticky. That sticks with people. They remember those stories, and you can make your point really effectively.
Yeah.
Because it's got an emotional connection, and emotions in humans are super powerful, far more powerful than logic,
Well, fear is an emotion. That is probably not the emotion you want people to
No,
lean into.
I would have to disagree with you. I think fear is an extremely important emotion. It's how you deal with fear. I find fear a critical part of my life. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, I always have been. And when you stand on top of a mountain and you're about to throw yourself off of it, or indeed you're on a helicopter about to go into a combat situation, that is a moment where your body has some choices in terms of how it responds. But ultimately, it's priming itself, and it's fear that is creating that ability to produce super performance. And I find that incredibly exhilarating. It's extremely stimulating putting yourself in fearful situations once you have the tools to be able to cope and harness the fear and then get a positive outcome, because it focuses the mind and the body in ways that you can't do without the fear. And that's why it's such a powerful stimulus. I can remember when I was probably in my top soldiering job, and I just turned 30. I've been in the Marines for 8 years, and I was responsible for our specialist reconnaissance forces. So it was our top sort of soldiering job, and I had the best guys across the whole of the Royal Marines in my team working for me. Shortly after 9/11, and I was the commander on the first British helicopter to fly into Afghanistan, into the mountains to hunt Al-Qaeda. And being on that helicopter and looking around that Chinook helicopter, and there was 24 of us on there, and I was the commander, looking around at the other 23 guys and thinking, some of us might not come back from this, all of us might not come back from it, but if I was going to be on here with anybody, I want it to be exactly these guys, And the adrenaline that you've got on that helicopter ride ready to explode when you get to the other end to achieve superhuman things with this amazing team, that's pretty powerful stuff that lives with you forever. And it's quite an extreme example, but you can get that in business as well. If you push yourself, you can do those amazing things and achieve incredible things, because we don't go on these journeys in sort of smooth lines, do we? It's steps and it's curves. It's not linear. So when you get those opportunities and you can just harness that fear and you can make that step in your life journey, it doesn't just have to be in your career, in any part of your life journey. And you go, wow, that was really cool. I did something that's fundamentally changed the game for me in that moment. So yeah, fear is incredibly powerful when you can harness it in the right way. It can make you do amazing things.
Well, as soon as I'm getting out of the podcast, I can find myself in a situation where I feel mortified.
Well, the thing about fear is you've got to push yourself to do new things that you find uncomfortable. Yeah, I urge people to push themselves. And I know, you're doing some amazing exercise regime that you haven't done before, and that's a great example of that. But if you push yourself too hard, too quickly, you're going to break yourself or you're going to put yourself off, right? So you got to just keep pushing yourself. And I'd say the same in leadership. That good leadership is understanding the capabilities of your people and then pushing them just a little bit beyond what they're comfortable with. And that's a real art, to be able to do that. It's not straightforward and it requires a lot of experience.
Wow, thank you for that. So when you do this, Jon, you and your team, the mission mindset, when you do this for organizations on a regular basis, are there particular components you always include in whatever the package is?
No, when we go into a business now, we'll run a whole load of data capture depending on what they want to assess what their team performance is like, what the composition of the team looks like in terms of the individuals, what the synergy, what the gaps are in that in terms of thought diversity and any problems with the team culture. And then we'll run one-on-one coaching interviews for all of the team, because these are almost always the top executive teams within an organization, including the CEO. That's what we're interested in, because that's where the real change comes from. And so off the back of that, we'll have a lot of insights into where the areas for improvement are and, what the real strengths are as well within your organization. And then we'll put together some recommendations, which are almost always agreed to. And then we'll put a bespoke program together for the whole team based on those findings. We'll normally run sort of three-day offsite, very similar to what you experienced, but it will be at a much higher level of understanding when we start, for the reasons I've just described, because we've done so much work and we know everybody as well. We've spent time with everybody getting to know them and their personalities, their strengths and weaknesses, their motivations, all that type of stuff. And then we'll do 6-month follow-up afterwards. Every 3 months, we'll do a reflection day. We might run some more metrics and so on. So we'll generally run a year-long program for an organization. We didn't really start out doing executive coaching, but now a big chunk of our business is executive coaching as well. It's a good business model for us.
Do you have particular criteria when you work with clients? Are there certain groups or people like that may not be a good fit?
Well, you need to be able to listen and accept that you might not be perfect, have a growth mindset effectively and want to be better. And we work with some clients who are extremely good in all respects, but still want to be better. And, that's really great. To give you a feel for the types of organizations we work with a couple of banks of different sorts, big consultancy business, a couple of e-commerce businesses, fashion and retail, telecoms, a couple of engineering businesses. So it's the whole spectrum. We used to be a bit more global. We've become quite European now. I think sort of COVID changed that and the ability to want to travel all around the world. It's not quite the same now. So we tend to work mostly within Europe now.
Jon, thank you so much for your time today. Is there one last thing you want to leave with our audience?
Yeah, I've got a sort of personal motto, which is live life without fear or regret. And I guess what I'd say to anybody is that we've all just got this one life, and it's so easy to just go along with what's put in front of you and just do the day to day every day. There's people like you, Jing, who are out there doing new stuff and being innovative and taking control of your journey. But there's lots of people who are super talented that aren't doing that. And I'd urge everybody that if you've got an itch and there's something you want to go and do, you think you can do it better, then just get out there and do it. Because you don't have to follow other people's rules. That's the cool thing. It takes you quite a while in life. It certainly did with me. It took me far too long to figure that out. But actually, you can do whatever you want within the law, of course. I have very high ethical standards. But, you don't have to play other people's games. You can create your own set of rules and you can do things the way you want to do it. And that's a super cool thing. So anybody that's got that itch and they think, yeah, I could go out and do this or I could do that. Well, just go and make it happen. You've only got one shot in life. Make it the best one you can.
Oh, wow. I did not expect our last conversation became this personal. Thank you again so much for your time
My
today,
pleasure.
Jon. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Be Brilliant with Jing Lang. We hope you found valuable insights and motivation to fuel your journey. Be sure to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And share this with 3 people in your life endeavoring to achieve personal greatness. Remember, brilliance is within you, and every step you take brings you closer to your best self. Keep striving, keep shining, and until next time, stay brilliant.